Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the People Show here. And of course, it is our legal hour with Cook County Circuit Court Judge Leonard Murray, who's going to be joining us momentarily. So just get ready for that. It's going to be a great program. I'm going to be having an extended program because I'm going to be talking about in the second hour, after Judge Murray leaves, we're going to be talking about Agenda 47 and Project 2025. I want to continue to inform us, continue to prepare us for one, what Project 2025 is and what its purpose is. And we're going to be talking about that. I want to make sure that you and all of us are better equipped with information that we can use to educate ourselves and to educate others in our ether, in our trusted circles, so that we make sure that our people are educated to what is going on, what the attempt is, what the position is of those people who are absolutely working to undermine the democratic process of what democracy is. You have to have a foundation for which to work from. That is what you have to have. So you have to have a basis of something to work for. So we're going to be talking about that coming up in the next hour. And we're going to share information with you from Agenda 47. We're going to share information with you from Project 2025 and how those two are inextricably tied together. They are not separate from each other. They are inextricably tied together. And we need to be informed about it. We don't need to get distracted by anything other than being informed about it. And we have to make a decision on what is important for us. We can't have this litmus test of purity where we are misguided. So we're going to be talking about that in the second hour of tonight's program, which is going to be an extended program. So those of you who are on Instagram, you will have to switch to YouTube in the second hour because we are only on for 1 hour on Instagram. So you can switch from Instagram to YouTube in the second hour. And all you have to do is go to my YouTube page and look for Mark Wallace, The People's Show, and you can go on there. I ask for everybody to register on my YouTube page so that we get our subscribers up. And there is no cost. There's no registration cost. There is no monthly fee. I'm only interested in making sure that we can continue to share our information with as many people as possible here locally in our area, in the region where we are here in Chicago, Cook County, in the state of Illinois. And then we can certainly expand it throughout the country. But certainly our priority is where we are and then sharing this information with others around the country. And the more people that we get to subscribe to it, the greater we can reach others and you can share with others. All right. So coming up in the 10 o'clock hour, we're going to be talking about Agenda 47. We're going to be talking about Project 2025. We're also going to be talking about the vice president's choice for her running mate of Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota. And of course, that particular choice I know a little bit about. And from all of the reviews that she had a great selection of people to choose from. And they believe that her choice in choosing Tim Walz is a excellent choice. So we're going to be talking about that in the next hour. But this is our legal hour until from 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock with Cook County Circuit Court Judge Leonard Murray, who is in the green room, and I'm going to be bringing him into the studio in just a minute. And I want to let you know For our second, this is our second show where you no longer have to write your questions in the chat. You can call. You can call on our call-in number at 951-221-8221, 951-221-8221. Now, when you call or before you call, you need to make sure that whatever device that you are watching the program on, whether it is your cell phone, whether it is a computer, however you're watching the program, you have to turn the volume down on that device, and you have to speak through your telephone, and you will hear the response through your phone. You cannot have your volume up because we will get feedback through the audio, and we will not be able to understand what you're saying. So you can't listen to yourself through your device, whatever the device is that you're on, whether it's your cell phone or your computer or your tablet. Please make sure you turn the volume down on that device when you call in to speak with the judge. Again, the telephone number is 951-221-8221, 951-221-8221. All right. And bringing on my guest, who is here with me now, is my good friend. He is the Circuit Court Judge of Cook County, Judge Leonard Murray. Welcome to the program. How you doing?
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Doing just great. All right, we're going to have a great show tonight. And I don't know if you heard, we now have our own guest call-in number, so we don't have to worry about people writing into the chat. They can actually call, and we can have a real conversation.
That's a great feature to have, and I'm sure it will expedite and probably increase the number of questions that are received, since it probably will be much easier to do it via phone.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that it increases the participation. I think this is a very important platform that we are having in terms of people getting an understanding of how the court system works. From a jurist who is actually working within the court system, and hopefully that it could help people understand what that process is when they come, or if they have a case that they have to go to court at some point. All of us will be in a court setting, but I think we all need to be educated on what that process is and how we should approach it.
Yes. More informed you are, the better you are. Like maybe a very prime example of that occurred in my courtroom this afternoon. The gentleman was issued 2 tickets. Excuse me.
Bless you.
One was for not displaying a current city sticker, and the other was a some sort of parking citation, maybe street cleaning or something of the sort. Um, and he apparently requested a hearing, but it may well be that he didn't request a hearing on both tickets. However, he goes in response to one of the notices, or a notice that he received relative to the ticket pertaining to the parking. And for some reason, he believed that that hearing also covered the ticket related to the city sticker. Only it did not. He was successful in being deemed not liable on the ticket related to the parking offense, but and he believed and was operating under the assumption that he had also received a ruling on the ticket related to city sticker, but he had not. So for a number of months, he apparently thought he had a favorable outcome on both tickets, but really only one of them was adjudicated. He then gets a notice of default, uh, does not attempt to vacate that default within the 21-day period, but pursuant to the administrative hearings rule. Therefore, when he did come in, it was denied because it was more than 20. He filed a motion more than 21 days. following the entry of the default order. Um, and he then petitioned the circuit court for a remedy. Um, but he was still operating under the assumption uh, that he had received an adjudication on his ticket related to the city sticker on the occasion when he visited one of the sites uh, relative to the parking citation, but he had not. And he was adamant about the fact that he had been given a favorable outcome on both tickets, but he had not mistakenly. And I explained to him. I said, it's and he suggested that he didn't understand what was going on, and I just explained to him that as a black man in America, you cannot afford to know what's going on. It's vital that you understand uh, your situation, your plight, and it's just not acceptable to claim that you don't know what's going on. That just
You are connected as the host.
that can
Welcome,
cause you
host. You are
significant.
now in the host room and can manage your callers from the call-in studio
Oh,
web
sorry
interface.
about that. That's an announcement that's going on. Okay, you go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you can get yourself into significant uh, problem not knowing what's going on in your life. And all of us, or many of us, have different levels of sophistication in our society. And I always try to explain to folks exactly what's going on so they become educated. They become better citizens, I believe. So uh, once the city was able to, they have access to those records from administrative hearing. So once they were able to uh, um, check the records to see what occurred, we discovered that he, in fact, was defaulted on that second ticket, the one relating to his city sticker, filed a motion to vacate, which he attempted to do more than 21 days later. So, of course, and then he files a case in circuit court. Now, many folks merge all of this process. They think it's a continuation of the administrative process, which it is not. It's a review process, like it's like an appeal. Um, so, given the circumstance, what I did was remand this case to the administrative hearing for a hearing on the merits of the underlying citation. Uh, and what he asked me at that time is, what did he need to do? And I just explained that, whatever defense you believe you had for that citation related to the sticker, city sticker, you got to come prepared at that hearing with that defense. I can't tell you what your defense is, but you got to go there prepared to present your defense. So it's just an example, and I see this frequently, of just not understanding the process. And you talked about some of your lead-in comments this evening was about knowing the process, understanding the process. It's important that you understand the process, because if you don't, you're very likely not to receive a favorable outcome.
Absolutely. And it's just basically knowing the very basics, right? Knowing the basics and not knowing the basics of what that process is can cost you dearly, even if you are right, if you don't understand that process. And so I think that it is extraordinarily important that we educate people as much as possible, especially in these critical areas, because at some point in time, we are going to be in a court for something, no matter if it's something for a parking ticket or some sort of lawsuit, whatever the case may be. The better you understand the process, the better you have an opportunity to have a better outcome.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that thought a minute. Uh, a person who I would call a friend um, faced a foreclosure. He and his brother had borrowed money uh, against some property that they owned, and unfortunately, for reasons it's still a mystery to me, uh, uh, that I get disconnected?
No,
Mark?
you're still here.
Okay, something popped up on my screen. Um, okay, okay. But in any event, the worst happened, so went to foreclosure, and then the judgment holder issued a citation against them to discover assets. So they appeared on the citation and answered questions which are under oath. And that citation can occur in the courthouse itself, or it could be in the lawyer's office. It just depends on where they want you to show up. And then the citation gets once you respond and give those questions, you satisfied the terms of the citation. So the citation gets dismissed. They thought that was dismissal of the case. And I tried to explain to him that was not a dismissal of the case. That just was a dismissal of the post-judgment citation. So they're operating on the assumption that the case is over, and it is not. That's just a citation that was dismissed. So it was, uh, it's just information. It wasn't legal advice that I was giving them. And these are a couple of folks who are, fairly well educated. So it was just surprising to me that they didn't understand that dismissal of the citation was not a dismissal of the case itself.
Exactly. Not understanding the very basics of the process. As we are talking about this, I'm thinking that we need to actually have, like we have civics in school or social studies. We need to have educational classes on understanding the process of our court system. Should you, or certainly when you become a part of that system, we should have that kind of teaching going on. And I don't think that kind of education is anywhere. I don't think it is anywhere outside of law school.
I think you're probably right. I don't think any of the classes in high school, certainly not when I went to high school, even barely covered American government. Certainly didn't cover the court system.
Yeah. Well, I think that will be something that we should recommend to our Chicago Public School board to really consider having some sort of judicial education in our schools so that our students understand what that process is.
Yeah, because even the moot court process that some of the schools participate in, that doesn't talk to you about process.
Mm-hmm.
You're arguing a case and considering some of the specific law that may apply to that set of facts, but that's not really talking to you about and teaching you about process.
Yeah, that's a great thought. All right, let's turn to something that has been certainly has bothered me for some time, but I never really gave it a lot of consideration until I actually, or any consideration of actually doing anything about it until I saw another gentleman who actually did something about it. So, and this question has, and it sparked conversations because I have conversations with people about it all the time. When you go to certain stores, when you go to certain outlets like Home Depot, or you go to Sam's Club, or you go to Costco's, not every store within those chains. You go to a store, you have a shopping cart, you purchase some products, right? You put them in your shopping cart. You go to the cashier. You stand there. The cashier rings them out and tells you your bill is $542 for these products that actually belong to that outlet. You tender your $542 for those products. You get a receipt. Now those products become your property. It no longer belongs to the outlet because there was consideration for that. They charged you for it. They rang it up. They told you how much it was. You tendered cash or credit card and paid for that product. They gave you a receipt for it. I now have ownership of that product. I began to leave the store. I go to the exit, and there's a person there, a security person, who says, "You can't leave. I have to check your receipt, and then I have to check your bag or your cart to make sure that you paid for these items." I contend that that is a real problem because you have all these surveillance cameras, probably about 100 of them. And I stood in line. Your cashier went through all of the products that I had in my cart and charged me for them and put them back in my cart. And I left. And the security person wants to check me. And I say, no, this is my property. It's my private property. And I don't want to give you access to my private property. My question is, does the retail outlet have a legal right to stop and search my private property without my volunteering?
Okay. I can't give you a yes or no answer to that, Mark.
Okay.
And let me begin by saying that there is a distinction to be made between a retailer uh, that where your right to um, enter and purchase items is based on a membership versus uh, say the typical grocery store uh, that is not the so-called big box type store um, that is in the community. So, and the distinction is that, for example, Sam's Club and Costco are membership uh, facilities in enterprises. Um, Usually, there's some sort of membership fee that you pay. There's also a membership agreement, and it is my understanding that um, part of that agreement allows them to uh, inspect your purchases to make sure that, in fact, all the items that are in your basket or cart have been paid for, as opposed to the retailers that are not based on um, a membership uh, set of circumstances. So I would encourage uh, all of us who have those membership arrangements at places like I've named to look at what you signed up for. Because if you signed up for that membership arrangement and it permits the retailer to inspect your cart or basket as you exit, then that's a contract and you're bound by it. Now, the flip side of that is, of course, where uh, your visit or right to um, enter a facility that is not premised on membership. It's available to the public generally, and typically, unless you engage in some sort of activity that could be offensive or criminal, you're permitted entry. So, in that situation, as you have suggested, once you um, uh, approach the means by which you check out. And as we now know, there are many checkouts that don't involve a cashier. It's self checkout. But however that is handled, uh, once you um, effectively scan the items, either a person who's assigned to do that for the retailer or wholesaler, uh, and or you engage in a self checkout mechanism that is in place, and there's more and more of that as we probably realize because we all buy stuff somewhere. Um, then once you in fact have scanned um, or at least presented for purchase those items to a human being or scan them in a self uh, checkout process. So once you have effectively presented all the items that you did not own when you reached that checkout facility or that person, and then you present those items for purchase, all of the items in your cart or basket, and you pay for them, then they are your property, as you've suggested. So the question then becomes, does the retailer have a right to require that you present, again, this is non-membership situation, that you present both your receipt and the items in your cart or basket for review to determine whether or not you have paid for them all? It would appear as if the answer to that is no. Um, so it's no unless uh, the retailer, through its agent, uh, has some basis for a suspicion that you have engaged in the theft of products, that you did not pay for every item in your cart or basket. So if there's a reasonable basis for suspicion in that situation, they can in fact engage. But if that engagement turns out to be in error or faulty, then they well may have impeded your rights, which could be a claim against the retailer for that reason. So that's kind of the short answer here. I'm sure we will, get more involved in terms of analyzing the question that you posed. But the quick answer to that is that you can refuse that inspection upon full payment and attempt to exit the facility.
Um, and you're right, because there could be very different nuances to each circumstances. So at certain outlets like Home Depot, you have your regular cashiers, and then they have what is called the pro desk. And you go to the pro desk, and they have a cashier there, and the cashier has to go to your cart and inspect and um, scan every item that you have in the cart. That is the cashier's responsibility, is to, when you bring your cart, the cashier has to go, they have to count each one of the items that you have, and they have to scan it. Once they've done that, they ring it up and they give you a receipt. Now, I, as a consumer, it's my responsibility to make sure that the cashier charged me for the items and the quantity of those items that I put into my cart, just as the cashier is responsible for making sure that he or she charged me or rang up each item that I have in. Once, I have that receipt, and I go to the door, and even if I didn't check it, if I go to the door and the person at the door wants to stop me because they suspect that I did not pay for everything in my cart, which is seemingly unreasonable to believe that a security person at a entry or exit door that does not have a clear view of every transaction that is going on would be able to make that sort of determination. Then you have the question of consistency, because in some of the outlets, they let a number of people go and they don't address them. They don't ask them. And some people come out and they decide that they randomly want to check them. The question becomes, is this a sort of a discriminatory practice from that outlet?
Well, that's raising an additional question in terms of for what reason are they, I guess, reviewing the transactions for certain folks versus others, and if in fact through data can be demonstrated that they're only reviewing the transactions of certain people from certain genders or ethnicities, then that does raise the prospect of discrimination, that they are not treating everyone equally.
Well, one of the, and okay, and I want to put, because I want to kind of keep it as general as possible. You have a certain, the same retailer that has a different practice at different outlets. So it's not consistent throughout their stores. There are only certain locations where they have that practice. Could that be deemed as discriminatory? Now they will say, well, we have a higher have a higher theft rate at this particular store than other stores, so we have to provide or have to put into place additional security measures. Is that something that is legally arguable in court?
I don't think so. I think you have to look at the overall system that is in place for this retailer, not just in certain neighborhoods, but across the spectrum of their operation. And it's probably, it may well be an easy proof if you can pinpoint how they operate in certain neighborhoods versus others, because the data will demonstrate that this group of folks are more selectively reviewed and engaged than folks in other neighborhoods. So I don't think the fact that they want to point to, they refer to as loss retention in one area versus another, that would justify the change in approach. It just suggests that you need to change your operational methods in those places in order to prevent the loss through theft or otherwise.
Okay, I'm trying to make sure that I do this right, because I don't know if there's somebody in the call center. So if those of you who would like to call and would like to speak to Judge Murray, and you have a legal question, our telephone number is 951-221-8221, 951-221-8221. I'm looking at the call center, I believe, in the studio, trying to make sure that I do have access, that I don't see anybody in the call center yet. Yeah, so, and the reason why I brought this up is because this conversation came up again. And what sparked it is because I saw somebody who said that they went to a retail outlet and that they were letting a certain ethnic group go past without, and it was a membership outlet, and I don't want to call the name of it, but they were letting a certain ethnic group of people go out. She recognized that. But when she got to the door, they wanted to, they asked her for her receipt. And she said, no, I'm not going to show you my receipt. You didn't ask everybody else for their receipt. But when I came through of a different ethnic group, you asked me for my receipt. And so it raised my question. I was like, yeah, let's have this conversation. Because I remember when I had the situation at Home Depot, which I do a whole lot of visiting there. It's almost like my second home because of my work. I decided that I was not going to allow them to check my receipt when I left. Now, first of all, as a, when you go to Home Depot, you are not going in and coming out in 5 minutes. That's just not happening. All right. So if you're going to Home Depot, you have to plan on being in Home Depot in line for 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is. That's just the nature of what we do. And we can't argue that, right? That's the process. Now, we wait in that in line and we go through that process, and I get to a cashier, and that cashier takes me through and scans all of the products, and they give me an amount, and I tender the payment for that process. Now I cannot complain about having to stand in line for this process because that's just the process, right? That's not Home Depot's fault. Unless they come up with
your option would be to go to a different store.
go to a different store. But even if you go to a different store, the process is the same. The process is the same, just for because of the mere nature of what you're going there for, right?
Yeah.
So the process is the same, and nobody makes any bones about it. None of us do, right? We just accept that is part of the process. However, when you do go through that process and you don't argue, and you go through and you tender your payment, you get, they go through this stuff, and then you go through the door and you have to wait in another line. That's when it becomes, that's when it becomes a problem. So I saw a gentleman who went through to the Home Depot, and the person was asking for his receipt, and he just kept on going outside of the door, and they were calling. He's like, "Sir, I got to check your receipt." And he was like, "No, you don't." And he just kept going, and it triggered something in my head. And I was like, when I got outside, I asked him. I said, "How come you didn't want to show him the receipt?" He said, "I don't have to show him my receipt. I don't have to show him my receipt when I go to the Home Depot at another location. When I go up north, I never have to show my receipt. I'm not going to show my receipt here." And of course, he triggered the activistness in me. So of course, I went back and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Then I started looking at the whole process. I wrote an email to Home Depot, and they responded. And they had the manager, the store manager of that location, to call me and said they'd be happy to talk with me when I went in. And of course I went in, and I was, had all my questions prepared that I was going to ask. And I said to him, my first question to him is, what is the purpose of me standing in line, and you have 100 cameras in the ceiling, 30 of which are over the area where we go to check out. So you have a security system in place. You have a cashier that scans every item on my cart and rings up those items on my cart, gives me a receipt. I check my receipt to make sure that they didn't charge me for something that I didn't get. And then I have to go to the door. Now I've had to stand in line for 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the time. I have no complaints about that because that's part of the process. However, I do have a problem after I've paid for this, and this becomes my stuff that I have to go to the door, and person at the door says, you can't leave until they check my receipt. I find that to be pretty offensive. And I don't want to do it. And I think it's wrong that anybody else should have to do it. So I asked him, what is the purpose of that? His response to me, because I guess nobody else had ever raised that question, I guess. His response to me was he was trying to find an answer. So he said, well, it's a safety precaution. That was his exact words. It's a safety precaution. So I look just like you look. I was like, a safety precaution. I said, what? You want to make sure I don't cut my hand with the receipt or what? What's the safety precaution? And he was just fumbling all over himself, right? Because he didn't have an answer for it. He didn't have an answer for it. So I said to him, I said, this needs to stop. This needs to stop. I said, if you have a problem with materials going out of the store without being paid for, then you have a problem at your cashiers at the point of sale. There is where you need to check that process, because once they go through my cart, which they have to go through every item in my cart, I don't touch the cart. They go through every single item. You got a scanner. They go through every item in that cart. If they're not ringing up every item on that cart, that's not my responsibility. You can't have a security measure because your process is breaking down. And so he said, well, that's just company policy. I said, well, there's a problem with your company policy. There's a problem with it. And unless you can demonstrate to me that I am violating some law, once I give you my money and you now have my money, this belongs to me. You don't. You only have access to it if I voluntarily say that you can have access to it. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to voluntarily say that you have access to it, because I've waited patiently here through that process, and I can't complain to it. I'm not standing in a second line to get out the door. I'm not doing it, right? So now I made a big stink about it. And I think the mistake that they made is by having that conversation with me out when other people could hear this conversation, because it sparked other people's thoughts. Well, to make a long story short, that location stopped that process. They stopped that practice.
Totally.
Yeah, totally. They totally stopped it. They still have a security person there, but they no longer ask you for your receipts. Now, what they did do, which I guess I'm okay with. I wasn't okay with it, but I live with it. What they did do, and I think they stopped that too. So what they did do is they stopped the security person from stopping you and asking you for your receipt, and they put into practice saying that the cashier has to walk you to the door. So I said, I'm not being chaperoned out by a cashier. You are not chaperoning me out the door. I said, my mother stopped chaperoning me 50 years ago. There's no more chaperoning. I'll be out the door. And one of the cashiers said to me, thank you very much. Thank you. We need you to go get rid of that process too. So
but that's asinine, because the security person can see you leave the cashier and head towards the door. Now, of course, if you didn't do that and for some reason went back into the store following your cashing out, that's a different issue. But to require that the cashier walk you to the door after having just taking care of your transaction, and what are we talking about? Probably 5 to 10 feet at most. So what could you possibly do when you're totally in the line of vision of the security person between the cashier and the door. That makes no sense.
Right. And that's what I was saying. You have all these eyeballs on the person at especially when they are at the point of sale, right? They're there with the cashier. So you totally have full view from your security cameras as well as from your security people if they're doing their job. Now, some of the security people are having conversations with other people and not paying attention, but that's not the consumer's responsibility. So this went on for a little while. This went on for a couple of weeks, right? Like every time that I would come into the store. Um, and the store manager and I became, quite friendly after that. Um, and so he walked me back and said to all of the cashiers that, kind of quietly, and to the security people, don't check his receipts. So, so I said to him, I'm not just doing this for me. No,
Mhm.
I'm not doing this for me. I don't want for anybody to be treated unfairly. This is a practice that, I don't want to get preferential treatment. I want nobody to be treated like this that comes here. If you have a problem with people walking out of the door with goods, then you have to put in a different security measure to make sure that everybody who leaves here with product goes through uh, your cashier process. But you can't
In
treat
fact,
every person, right?
yeah.
So that's
In
what I
fact,
said. If you go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, in fact, it is a crime for a cashier to purposefully not register, if you will, items for sale. It's a crime. It's shoplifting under Illinois law. So if there's a scheme going on between a cashier and an acquaintance of theirs, then that's a crime.
Mhm.
If he or she is intentionally not scanning items in an attempt to have their associate not have to pay for them, that is in fact a crime.
Um, exactly. So I guess they're an accomplice to a crime or an accessory or whatever
Yeah.
the correct language is. Now, there have been cases. There have been cases, whether it was innocent or whether it was purposeful. Now that they have terminated cashiers because now, if you can imagine in Home Depot, you have the cashiers and you have these big carts with large items on them. And some of the items are so large, you can't bring them in a line. So that's why they give the cashiers a scanner to go over where the carts are to make sure that they're scanning every item on the cart and to make sure that they're scanning every cart that you have because some people might have 2 or 3 different carts. It happens. Now, so there was one cashier who lost their job because they accused the cashier of ringing up of not ringing up all the products or allowing for people to go out with carts that had not been scanned. Right now, could that happen innocently? It could, because as a cashier, it is virtually improbable that you are going to see every cart that is out there and know who that cart belongs to. So if a person is standing in the line with a cart or standing in line and saying, okay, I have these 3 carts over here, but there are 2 more carts outside of that person's sight, that once she goes or he goes through those 3 carts that you have and scan all of those and you pay for it and you take those 3 and then you take the other 2 carts out the door with you. So they they terminated this person because it had happened a few times. So they said that this person was engaging in shoplifting, if you will. But and I'm not defending them because I don't know whether they were or they were not, but I do know that there are times that people put carts outside of the site of the person who is ringing them up, and there is, all this traffic going on. You don't know who belongs to what cart. I was sorry to see that they lost their job, but you know, again, I and then after I really thought about it, and after you look at the circumstances, I think that there's a problem with their process, with Home Depot's process, because the cashier needs he or she needs better assistance. If there's three carts sitting over there near the door, and the person is standing in line and says, "Well, here are my carts," then Home Depot needs to have somebody else or that security person saying, "Hey, these carts can't be in this aisle. They have to be in another aisle that they have to pass through a checkpoint, if you will. It needs to go through a checkpoint rather than just sort of sitting, haphazardly um, anywhere." So, um, so I said to the store manager, that I think you all really need to look at your process here, because you open yourselves up for potential theft because you don't have a tighter control of where people are able to even sit carts that have not been scanned by your cashiers, right?
Okay.
Like, you have
Okay.
at a grocery store, right? You have these cashiers standing there. You can't take items through those lines that have not been scanned, right? You can't even get out unless they have been scanned. But there is opportunity in places like, Home Depot, where, you know, uh, they need to tighten it up.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because whether intentional or not, the failure to pay for an item in a retail setting is shoplifting.
Right.
The person who got away with not paying for those items did commit a crime. And it's interesting, some of the other situations under the act that are crimes as well. So let's assume that the scenario that you cited, um, that person got out of the store without paying for a cart or two of product, then brings it back and attempts to get a refund on that product that they didn't pay for. That is
Hmm.
shoplifting. That's a
Yes.
crime. That is a crime. So it's not merely walking out the door without paying. It's also walking in the door trying to get a refund on items that you didn't pay for.
Right. Right. All right. Listen, we have a few minutes left. If those of you who would like to call in, we would love for you to talk with the judge. The telephone number here is 951-221-8221. 951-221-8221. You dial in, I will be able to see you, and we'll come right to your call. I think this is it's very interesting. Um, about that. And um, so there is a question that people say, that a security officer, right? A security officer in a store, do they have powers to detain someone who is suspected of shoplifting?
Well, they're not law enforcement officers, and I think even a law enforcement officer who was working a second position, if you will, not their day job, um, uh, needs to demonstrate a reasonable suspicion as a basis for detaining someone. And if um, upon that interference with your liberty. If it's determined to be unfounded, then I believe the store faces the possibility of litigation, or at least a claim for interfering with your liberty. So it is not, whatever the store's loss prevention apparatus is, uh, when that apparatus begins to operate, um, its parts must have a reasonable basis of suspicion for doing so. And it can't be arbitrary or capricious. You've got to have a reasonable suspicion for assuming that the person that you interfered with the coming and going has in fact engaged in theft in that facility.
Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. I want to take these last few minutes. I want to, if we can turn to a little bit of politics. There was a big decision made today. Vice President Kamala Harris seems to be making, in all of the commentary that I've heard, seem to be making just brilliant moves in terms of her process of at now being the presumptive candidate or the presumptive nominee. Last night I had a program on, and we were talking about somebody came on and said, well, obviously they were not pro the Democratic nominee, and they were upset that Joe Biden was a candidate all the way up until 17 days ago or 18 days ago, and that Kamala Harris is now the candidate. And they were trying to suggest that they had violated the law and violated the Constitution. And I said, they violated the Constitution? Cite it for me what the violation was. So he says, well, in order to remove a president, there has to be invoke the 25th Amendment. I said, first of all, Kamala Harris is not replacing the president. The president is still the president. The president decided that he was not going to accept the nomination for president to be the nominee for the presidential election. He has every right to do that. Now, he then endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to be the nominee. That doesn't make her the nominee. What makes her the nominee is that you have delegates in 50 states, and the delegates have every right to do with their delegate as they wish. Every delegate. They can pledge their delegate to whoever it is that they want. That's the process. That's the way it works. It has nothing to do with the 25th Amendment. And so he said, no. I said, no, that's correct. It does not, it has nothing to do with the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment is that has to be invoked by Congress and cabinet members or cabinet members of that particular administration. And there's a process for which the 25th Amendment becomes invoked if they deem that the president is not capable of carrying out its duty and should be removed from office. That's what the 25th Amendment. So you're talking about two completely different processes. So, but at any rate, um, I wanted to um I wanted to get your thoughts on this process. Tim Waltz, I know a little bit about. I know a little bit about Tim Waltz and what they've been able to do down there in Minnesota, which I think is kind of brilliant because they have like only a one vote majority, but they have been able to get some, you know, most of their agenda passed down in that area. So um, just did you have any observations about that process?
The governor of Minnesota is not someone that I am familiar with. I know um, it was reported that he was one of the three top tier uh, candidates being considered. I guess there were roughly six names that had been floated over the past week or so, or two maybe. Um, but he I do not know a lot about. Of course, Minnesota is generally viewed as a more liberal state, so it might be suspected that he may come from that orientation. I know there was some thought that the senator from Arizona, Mark Kelly, I think his name is, could bring someone to the White House who has military background. He was military officer and also an astronaut. And then I think it's Shapiro, whose name I don't remember the first name, governor of Pennsylvania. They thought
Josh Shapiro.
he could bring some executive experience into the White House. Although Vice President Harris does have executive experience. She was Attorney General of the state of California, so that's an executive position um, that she served in for. I don't know if it's one or two terms, but so she does have executive experience. Plus, she now has approaching 4 years of experience as being the Vice President of the United States. That's not an insignificant office. But I just don't know enough about Mr. Walsh to really chime in on whether or not that's a good uh, strategic position for her to take it or not. Um, but what I've heard is that generally it's been viewed favorably.
Yeah, in fact, what I've been hearing is that all of the candidates, there were five, and then it came down to the top three, and that anyone that she chose would not have done any harm, right? It says do no harm, but any one of them, based on the conversations that I've heard, is that this was kind of an unusual situation where she had all of them had very positive ratings, very positive opinions about them. Now, Josh Shapiro, there was, a little concerned about his views on the Israel Gaza or the Israel Hezbollah Hamas conflict, and but they said that even though that may have had some concerns with some of the more progressive Democrats, that he still would have been a great selection. But they seem to think that her choice by choosing Tim Waltz was brilliant because were it not for him taking the case from the state's attorney and giving it to the attorney general, there would not have been any justice in the George Floyd um, uh, murder. And so he is highly, highly regarded and noted for that. So they think that it's just a really brilliant choice. And from what I have heard, and his response to the other side's comment, he seems to have a pretty good command on how to respond to those sort of things. So um, it looks like they're on the right path, and that uh, the um the Trump campaign is still trying to figure out how to get their footing with this new campaign.
Yeah, it seems like they haven't quite figured out what kind of attack they're going to try to make, because none of the stuff that they have tried thus far, I think, is causing, you know, any concerns in the campaign, Harris campaign at least. So, um, but it's interesting. Some of the comment that I believe he made last week was, if you vote in this election, and he wins, you won't have to ever vote again. I don't quite understand what that means, but maybe he can explain it.
Yeah, I mean, to suggest to people that please go vote, and it's all going to be fixed and you won't have to vote again. Um, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does what does you could only really interpret that as one thing, right? That most people can interpret that as that, okay, he really does is trying to set it up to where there won't be any elections if he has anything to do with it going forward. But just some of the comments are very concerning comments, but they're not doing them any good. And every time that they try to use something, I mean, they've tried to take what has happened with the global markets. They tried to call it. He called it a Kamala. Um, I forgot what he called it. Some sort of a Kamala, just something about the markets. Kamala crash. That's what he called it. A Kamala crash. And I think that every time he starts to make comments, it just doesn't get him any points. Doesn't get him any points. Doesn't getting anywhere. It just makes him look even more dis, you know, um, distracted, or just not having any real idea as to how to even deal with this. Also saying that he was not going to engage uh, with the debate that had been agreed upon. So uh, going to be it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be interesting. I'm watching a certain group of people to watch how they're going to vote. I want to see how the women are actually going to vote, what that breakdown is going to look like in this election. Now, of course, uh, and I'm comparing that to how the women voted in the election with Hillary Clinton. But the there are some issues, right, on in this election that were not as prevalent in that election, uh, that um, directly impact women's choices. So I want to see um, what those voting ratios look like. All right. Well, listen, Judge Murray, that's going to do it for us. If you got any closing thoughts,
No,
comment.
if I did mention it, uh, for retail theft, um, the misdemeanor is any item, or aggregate, any aggregate that does not exceed $300.
Mhm.
Um, if it exceeds $300 or greater, then that's a felony. I think it's a class 4 felony. Um, um, and then the state legislature enacted a provision that makes this sort of coordinated retail theft operation as a felony. And I think that was an outgrowth of what occurred in the Judge Floyd situation, where it appears as if there were some coordinated efforts by folks to attack certain retail outlets in order you know, to take items off the shelf without paying. So now, if it's demonstrated that there is that collective effort, that is a felony.
Okay. Um, that you mentioned this. Um, Here's a question. You may or may not have the answer to this. And if you don't have the answer to it, we can address it next week. Now, some people may think it's a small thing. Now, when I was a kid, my mother and my father would go to the grocery store. My father was notorious. My father was notorious about, I think I may have a caller here. No, I don't. Okay. Um, my father was notorious about picking up uh, fruit and eating the fruit while in the store. And so the question is that an arrestable offense?
Well, it is. It would likely be considered a misdemeanor because no doubt that one peach, if you will, would be worth less than $300. So it would be a misdemeanor, but it would be a crime. I think most outlets don't look at it as so serious as to raise an issue about it, but they just consider it part of the cost of doing business, if you will. Testing the product. Uh, I can just say that I think I've bought. I'm now on my third watermelon for the summer, and the first two I bought were not sweet. Um, so, uh, unfortunately, in the retail outlets, they don't allow you to plug them like some
Uh-huh.
of some of those operations that you find on the street where they'll
Mhm.
plug it and let you get a taste of it. But that would be great if you could plug those watermelons before you would buy them in the retail store, so you could test their sweetness.
Well, I suggest not buying watermelon in retail stores. I suggest buying watermelons from the farmers. You have a much better chance at getting a good, sweet watermelon. And I'm going to give a free plug to the place where I buy my watermelons because I have gone 3 for 3 this year.
Mm.
Last year I was 0 for 3. this
Okay.
this year I have been 3 for 3, and I bought the fourth one today.
Mm.
This is probably our final watermelon for the season. But I brought the fourth one today, and um, my wife has not said yet, don't buy any more watermelon. And that's because we've had sweet watermelons. And so
Mm.
what I did was I said, you know what, I'm going to go early. I'm going to go right at the break of when they open up. And I have been, like I said, 3 for 3 sweet watermelon. There's a place right on. Of course, we're right towards the end of the season, uh, and they've dropped the price almost $10. Um, uh, Not quite $10, but almost $10. Um, on 100th and Halsted, there's a place called Baylor's Market there. They have their little shed there, and I'm telling you, this year they had a really good crop, really good
Mm.
crop. I never take a chance at buying a watermelon in a grocery store anymore.
Okay.
So
I'll remember that.
yeah, because now um, you know how to determine an organic watermelon from a synthetic watermelon.
Are you talking about seedless versus seeded watermelons? Is that what you mean?
Well, not seedless versus seeded, but organic watermelons that come out of the ground, as
Yeah.
opposed to synthetic that are grown in synthetically grown.
Okay.
Organic watermelons, you know that they're organic if the seeds are black and brown. If you have a watermelon that only has white seeds, it's a synthetically grown farmed watermelon. And the ones that have the seeds are more likely to be good and sweet than the ones that are synthetic. I guess that's my southern
Okay.
roots.
All right.
For watermelon. So I only like the ones that are organically grown. So, all right, Judge Murray, look, that's going to do it for us this week. Folks, we will be back with Judge Murray next week for another edition of the Legal Hour on the People Show, with us every Tuesday night from 9 o'clock till 10. Remember, you all can call in. We want to get our viewers up, and we want to get our participation up. Now we'll probably get more people once they know that they can call in. People like to hear themselves talk, so we'll probably get more participation when they find out that there is an actual outlet to call in.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
All right, we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right, folks. Listen, I want to talk more about Project 2025 and Agenda 47. Those two are inextricably tied together. Agenda 47, in some parts of that, just for an example, and Agenda 47 is actually the plan that is on the Trump website. And one of the things that he says, he promises that he's going to carry out the largest domestic deportation in history. He will also ask for the death sentence for anyone convicted of human trafficking. This is all on his page. He will close the Department of Education and return all education standards for the states to decide. He would put prayer back into school. I'm not sure how he does that. He will put prayer back into school, somebody who doesn't pray. And he will criminalize any race-based advantage program. He will end the Affordable Care Act. He will ban gender-affirming care for adults, and he will ban any federal dollars from going towards any gender-affirming care, which means anyone with government-provided health care will no longer be able to access gender-affirming care except for Viagra and Cialis. Those are still available. He will propose a constitutional amendment that will give term limit to Congress. He will deploy the Department of Justice to investigate the Biden crime family. Now, you don't have to believe me. Just go to his page, and I'm just giving you a summary. Biden crime family and any of his adversaries or political rivals. He would immediately pardon all of the January 6th convicted felons, and he will create a task force to investigate anyone who arrested, charged, or imprisoned a January 6er. He will increase the penalties for underage criminal offenders, strengthen immunity for police officers, and deploy the National Guard to patrol, get this, woke cities. You know what that means? To patrol black cities, places where there are large black populations. All of this is on his page. He says that on day one, he will reassess our participation in NATO And he says that every European country needs to pay the United States for protection. Now, this is not a dictator, right? I mean, this is um, what the Republicans have as their nominee. He will also restore the wonderful travel ban for Muslims coming into the country. He said that he will build freedom cities. This is 10 new cities built on federal land. He will award them to the areas with the best developmental proposal, and he will prioritize moving young families to these freedom cities. He said he will kill all electric vehicles and electric vehicle legislation, seeking to replace that with the development of, get this, a flying car, which he believes that we could create a car that will vertically take off. He will remove all of the limits on American natural gas exports and drill, baby, drill. That's on his website in caps. For oil domestically, he will impose a tariff of up to 60% on Chinese imports. Can you imagine what the cost of goods would be for you and I if he were to actually, one, get elected, and two, impose 60% tariffs on all Chinese imports? He will extend the 2017 tax cuts and drop the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%. He will push Congress to pass legislation that will give every American the right to a concealed carry to carry anywhere at any time. And he will revoke any gun restrictions on legislation that seeks to inhibit people's ability to own a gun that's been passed in the last several years. He will demand that Europe pay back all money we gave to Ukraine, and then he will use all of that money to recruit for the American military, and he will take billions and billions of dollars from private universities and, on his website, private university endowments by taxing, fining, and suing universities. On his website, he specifically names Harvard University in that policy proposal. And then he will use the money to create the American Academy. It is a free online college that will be free for all, here we go, wokeness, will be free of all wokeness, that he will force employers to recognize as a bachelor's degree equivalent, and that is Agenda 47. That's on the website of the Trump administration. Now he says that he does not know anything about Project 2025, right? He says he doesn't know anything about Project 2025. I pulled up some of my notes here. Let me see if I can go to Project 2025, and let's see who is at the top of Project 2025. Okay, here we go. Project 2025. Okay, I want to go through the okay. All right. So here's the summary of what the book is. It says Project 2025 is a product of more than 400 scholars. First of all, there are not 400 scholars. There is a group on that they have all these different groups. And one of the groups that they have is that it's called the Frederick Douglass organization. And it is headed up by two people. One is a comedian. He's not a scholar, he's a comedian. And the other, we were not able to find or track what his actual education background is or professional background is. And so it says 400 scholars and policy experts from across the conservative movement and around the country. Contributors include former elected officials, world-renowned economists, and veterans from 4 presidential administrations. This is an agenda prepared by and for conservatives. That's what it says, for conservatives. So it's not prepared for anybody else. If you're not a conservative, then you're not included in this agenda. I'm not sure then how they're going to be governing for all of the United States. It says, prepared by and for conservatives who will be ready on day one of the next administration to save our country. The Heritage Foundation is once again facilitating this work, but as our dozens of partners and hundreds of authors will attest, this book is the work of the entire conservative movement. The next conservative president will enter office on January 20, 2025. Now, they have already suggested that that the I'm sorry, I got to put the phone back up. I'm sorry. And you will be able to call in. Something happened. Something happened. So you're going to hear an announcement. Okay.
You are connected as the host.
All right.
Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the call-in studio web interface.
Okay, there we go. All right. So if you all call, I will get your call. All right. So let me continue here. It says the next conservative president will enter on January 20, 2025. Now, it is certainly our hope that Donald Trump is not elected January of 2025. Now, even if he's not elected of January 2025, this says this, it is for the next conservative administration. So we have to make sure that we don't even have a conservative Congress so that they can put their agenda in place. So it says on January 20, 2025, with a simple choice they call greatness or failure. It will be a daunting task, but no more so than ever every other generation and American has faced and passed. The conservative promise represents the best efforts of the conservative movement in 2023 and the next conservative president's, plural, last opportunity to save our republic. So now these are people who have worked in this is the table of context. Paul Dan, right, who worked in the Trump administration. Kevin D. Roberts, Rick Dearborn worked in the Trump administration. Russ Voigt, this is for the Executive Office of the President of the United States. The central personnel agencies managing the bureaucracy. Donald Devine, Dennis Dean Kirk, and Paul Dans all worked for Donald Trump's administration. In Section 2, they called this the Common Defense. The Department of Defense, Christopher Miller, you all remember Christopher Miller, who worked in the cabinet of Donald Trump's administration. The Department of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli. The Department of State, I don't know what that means. Kieran K. Skinner. Intelligence Community. These are all the department that they're creating. Dustin J. Carmack. Media agencies, U.S. Agencies for Global Media, Morrow, Namdar, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Mike Gonzalez, Agency for Internal Development, Max Pre-Morak, the General Welfare, the Department of Agriculture, Darren Basks, Department of Education, Lindsay M. Burke. These are the people who are being set up to get rid of these departments. Remember, they get rid of the Department of Education. All right, so that's just some of the table of conduct or contents. So let me go through these some of these notes that we have here. So I want to go through what the actual document was. All right, so Project 2025 document lays out in great detail how supporters want to implement Project 2025. It says that more than 900,000 people have downloaded the document, according to the New York Times reporting. It says amongst its numerous recommendation, it calls for the following, not in any particular order, but this is what it calls for. Changing how the FBI operates. According to the plan, the agency is completely out of control, and the next conservative administration should restore its reputation by stopping investigations that are supposedly unlawful or contrary to the national interest. Now, who makes that determination? It also says that the document calls for legislation that would eliminate term limits for the FBI directors and require that that person answer to, get this, the president and not be its own independent agency. Eliminating the Department of Education. The plan explicitly proposes federal education policy should be limited, and ultimately the federal Department of Education should be eliminated. The report calls for bans on so-called critical race theory and gender ideology. I should ask Judge Murray if he had to take critical race theory when he was in law school, if you remember that. Lessons in public schools, asking for legislation that would require educators who share such material to register. Get this now. I'm gonna read this again because I want you all to understand exactly what these people are saying. So I'm going to go back. It says the Federal Department of Education, one, should be eliminated. The report also calls for bans on so-called critical race theory and gender ideology. Lessons in public schools, asking for legislation that would require educators who share such material to register as sex offenders and be imprisoned. This is the movement of Project 2025, and these are what they plan to put in place in the first 180 days of the next conservative administration. Defunding the Department of Justice. Says The document proposes prosecuting federal election-related charges as criminal, not civil cases. Otherwise, the document says voter registration fraud and unlawful ballot correction will remain federal election offenses that are never appropriately investigated and prosecuted. I wonder if they plan on investigating those people who voted Republicans and cast ballots of dead people. I wonder if those people would qualify. Reversing the Biden era policies attempting to reduce, eliminate, change. The document authors call for increasing the country's reliance on fossil fuels and withdrawing from efforts to address any climate crisis, such as offices, programs, and directives designed to advance the Paris Climate Agreement. Kind of sounds like what they did when they disbanded the Center for Disease Control when we got hit with a pandemic of COVID-19, where more than, according to experts, 500,000 people died senselessly because of the poor response to it of the Trump administration. Stopping cybersecurity efforts to combat mis and disinformation. The document recommends that cybersecurity and infrastructure security agencies to stop its efforts to curtail online propaganda campaigns, arguing that the federal government should not make judgment calls on what's true and what isn't true. Changing immigration policies. Authors want the federal government to deprioritize DACA, that's the Deferred Action and Childhood Arrivals, the program that temporarily delays the deportation of immigrants without documentation who came to the United States as children, phase out temporary work visas, programs that allow seasonal employees to hire foreign workers, impose financial punishments on so-called sanctuary cities that do not follow federal immigration laws, and divert tax dollars toward security at America's border with Mexico. While the Biden campaign claims that Project 2025 calls for ripping mothers away from their children at the border, there is no explicit mention of separating families. Rather, it calls for stronger enforcement of laws governing the detainment of immigrants with criminal records and restricting and exiting program that tracks people in deportations proceedings instead of incarcerating them. In some cases, those changes could possibly play a role in border control agents detaining a parent while their child continues with the immigration proceedings. Now, that's just a fancy word for saying that they're going to be separating parents from their children. Restricting access to abortion. The plan wants the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, to stop promoting abortion as health care. Additionally, Project 2025 recommends the Federal Drug Administration to stop promoting and approving requests for manufacturing abortion pills. Alternative options to abortion, especially adoption, should receive federal and state support, according to Project 2025 documents. Removing LGBTQ plus protections. The plan calls for abolishing gender policies. Gender Policy Council, a Biden-created department within the White House that aims to advance equity in government policy for those who face discrimination. Also, the proposal wants the federal government to remove terms such as sexual orientation and gender identity. from all records and policies, as well as rescind policies that prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, and sex characteristic. This is really, what this is all about. Is they just certainly want to control. These are the people who are saying that they want freedom. They want freedom. Like for them to identify what that really means. Cutting ties completely with China. For instance, the document advocates for restricting people's access to TikTok because of its China-based parent company, prohibiting Confucius Institute, cultural institutions at colleges and universities funded by the Chinese government, and blocking Chinese entities from partnering with U.S. companies. Revising protections, reversing protection acts, protection against discrimination in housing. The Biden campaign, now it is the Harris campaign. Emails reference a portion of the document that calls for repealing a decade-old policy strengthened under Biden that attempts to prevent discrimination and reduce racial disparity in housing. Project 2025 also recommends making it easier to sell off homes used for public housing, a benefit to real estate developers, but result in fewer cheap housing options for poor and low-income families. Changing federal job classifications. To execute the above listed objectives, the roughly 922-page document calls for the federal government operated by political appointees equipped to carry out the president's desires. Put another way, Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation, said that in July of 2023, independent federal agencies that do not answer to the president, then they want to fill currently merit-based hires not politically appointed. Under the current system, the federal government administration sector is made up of an administration that takes over the Oval Office. It selects similarly minded people to fill highly ranking positions, political appointees, and those people leave the jobs when the new president takes over. According to the Brookings Institution, a public policy think tank, around 4,000 political appointees run the executive branch. Those are the people that the president, whatever administration comes in, they have about 4,000 jobs that they have to fill. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of positions that run day-to-day operations are hired through a merit-based system that is hiring a process that is designed to prioritize applicants' specialized expertise or experience, not their personal beliefs or affiliations. Those people are career civil servants. Project 2025 proposes turning up to 50,000 career civil servant jobs into politically appointed positions. Now, I want to stick a pin in that. That is tantamount to creating a dictatorship. They want to take 50,000 people and put them on the streets and put all politically appointed positions in place. If this is not talking about creating a dictatorship, I don't know what is. So to do that, Project 2025 wants the president to reissue Schedule F, a Trump-era executive order that Biden rescinded when he became president in 2020. Generally speaking, 2021, I should say. Generally speaking, the order would recategorize career civil servants into at-will employees, giving higher level workers the ability to terminate employment for any reason without warning and fill those jobs with new people. Project 2025 recommends revamping the existing appeals process for employee dismissals, arguing that current system prevents managers from firing or hiring the right employees. In other words, take away your right to be protected by a union. The plan also proposes a freeze on hiring top career civil service positions at the beginning of the administration. By doing so, the plan argues the new administration will prevent today's administration's leaders later on outgoing political appointees from borrowing in, that is, hiring left-leaning career bureaucrats across federal agencies for the purpose of undermining the next president. That is the synopsis. That is the summary of what Project 2025 is and what they want to do. I think that it is critically important, right? I think that it is critically important that we understand precisely what this is. Period. I think we need to understand exactly what this is. This is an absolute attempt to not only get rid of democracy, to blow it up, but to turn our democratic process into an absolute dictatorship. That's what this is all about. Now, what I am saying to you, if you are these labels, and these labels to me, in many respects, are become counterproductive because they have been weaponized in so many respects. So, what I will say is this, is if you are a person who cares about process and cares about our democratic process, and you don't want to live under an authoritarian type regime, because it's no longer a government, because it's not going to be for the public or for the people, then I would suggest this. Not saying that you should forget about what your political philosophies are. There are now Republicans that are saying our democracy is at risk. Our democracy is at risk. What is more important? That I be loyal to a party because I am upset, frustrated with some things that are happening. Even that you would you risk having the opportunity to have a representative government that you actually have someone that you have voted for to represent the interest of your community, that your congressperson, your senator that you have elected to go there to be your representative, to vote on policies that will be policies um, that are in the best interest of the masses? Are we going to be so caught up in, I've got to be loyal to the team regardless of whether or not it's destructive to the whole or to the masses? I think we're better than that. I know that we are better than that. I think we all have to take a step back and we have to say, what is best? Forget about the purity test, please. Let's move away from that, because none of us, excuse me, none of us are pure. None of us. So why should we be so hypocritical at wanting to hold people that we don't agree with to that chalk line when we cannot measure up and walk that same chalk line? We have to, and I said this last night, we must identify and recognize our responsibility to each other and our responsibility to decency for the greater good, for the public good, not for my private, personal opinion or just my group of people or the people that's important to me. We should all be concerned about having a government that is inclusive for all of us. So when you hear people say that democracy is on the ballot, it is. The United States is a representative democracy. That means that our government is elected by the citizens, meaning those people who are in our government, our president, our senators, our Congress people, our state legislatures, our state senators, our governors, our mayors, our alder people, our council people, our county representatives. We vote for the officials, and these officials represent the citizens, or at least they're supposed to. The ideas and the concerns within the government to represent you and I, the citizens. That is what a democracy is. What we have is we have one side and a group of people from that side saying, we want to blow that up. We don't want for everybody to vote. You literally have people who have crafted that they do not want for everybody to participate. And these are people who call themselves conservatives. If you remember Paul Wayward, way back in the 80s, who was the chairman of the conservative Republican convention. I think I have that clip somewhere. So now I see that J.R. Carr says that we didn't vote for Harris in the primary. If you voted for Joe Biden, you voted for the Biden-Harris administration and candidacy. So if you voted for President Biden, you did vote for Kamala Harris. That is the reason why you have a vice presidency. When the president of the United States is not able to serve, then you have the person who is ready and has the wherewithal to step into that role. So if you voted for Joe Biden, you voted for Kamala Harris. Meaning that if Joe Biden, for whatever reason, was not able to continue or decided that in the best interest that he would not seek the nomination, he made that decision. However, Joe Biden did not and does not have the power to appoint anybody as the nominee. That's why we have delegates. Delegates are people that we, the citizens, vote for to be our representative in nominating or voting for a nominee to be the candidacy for the presidency. That's what delegates are. We voted for them from all 50 states. That's a part of our democracy. That's a part of our democratic process. These are the people who are now representative of us. And those delegates cannot be told who to vote for. They have the right to vote for whomever it is that they wish to nominate on behalf of us, we the people. That's what the delegates do. That's what their roles are. It's not controlled by the President of the United States. It's not controlled by the Vice President of the United States. It's not controlled by Congress. It's not controlled by anybody. The delegate votes are that of the delegate. And they can vote for whoever it is that they want to support. Period. That's what it is. Now, the fact that we are in a place that what is more important is to get to, or certainly to protect and save the democratic process that we have in place, to work with, to debate policy, to debate issues. We need to make sure that that stays in place so that we have the access, so that we can go to a representative, that we can call a representative, we can meet with our representatives. And if need be, we can do civil demonstrations to get the attention of our representatives. But you have in the campaign and in the rhetoric of Donald Trump, who is saying something different that's antithetical to what has been in existence since the founding of the country. And that we continue to work to make stronger and to make it better, to make it more equitable. That's what we have to decide. So for me, and I hope for you, which is why we cannot allow for Donald Trump to take the presidency and just blow up all of the work to get us to where we are now. Not that where we are now is perfect or anywhere close to perfect, but it is a process that is one of the best processes in the world that we have available to us to make things better in our countries, in our communities, in our cities, in our counties, in our states. That's what is at hand here. That's literally what is at hand. All right, listen, that's going to do it for me tonight. What I want to say to you is that I want to continue. I actually want to have some conversation. So, I'm going to have other programs coming on now that we have the wherewithal to take calls and to engage in conversation. I really want you to call. I really want you to call. Let's have a conversation. Let's be better informed. Let's educate each other. Let's trade information, ask questions, so that we are better informed, so that we can go out and inform. We can share factual information about our process, about about our democratic process, about our democracy, why it's important, right? And what a delegate is. What a delegate is. Here's the definition of what a delegate is. A person sent or authorized to represent others. In particular, an elected representative sent to a conference, the delegates rejected the proposal or they support a proposal. But it is someone that we voted for to go there to be our representative, where we entrust a task or a responsibility to another person, typically one who is less senior than oneself. The power delegated to the person that we voted for to become our representatives. That's what a delegate's role is. And that delegate can't be dictated to, but we vote for them, which means that we have to trust what their decisions are. So I continue to say to us, think about this. Just take a moment to tamp it down and to lower our emotions and to put our opinions in check, making sure that our opinions are rooted in something of factual basis. That is the only way that you could have real intelligent exchange, is that we have to be able to agree on at least the basis of the same facts. Because facts are not refutable. Facts are not refutable. Like my couch is of cream color. That is a fact. I might have an opinion about that cream color. You might have an opinion about that cream color, which you have every right to your opinion about the color of the couch, as I have an opinion or every right to it. But we cannot say that the couch does not exist when it clearly does exist. And that is the difference, is that some of us have gone and retreated back to our corners for loyalty's sake and not based on principle. And I asked all of us to weigh what you believe and know to be about character, about discipline, about our courage and our consciousness. Just think about that. And if you earnestly meditate on it, I believe that you will receive a message that will be more instructive to you doing something positive than responding to something with just emotions and loyalty or blind loyalty. All right, I'm asking for you all to do that. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. We are going to end it right there. We'll be back here probably in another day or so. I want to come back, continue the conversation. I want to talk to you. You can call me at 951-221-8221, and we can continue to talk about this thing that we call democracy. But what I want to do is I want to play something for you. I want to play something for you. I want you to listen to this clip. I want you to listen to this clip. This is Paul Weyrich, and this is a conservative and what he thinks about everybody having an equal vote. This is what Paul Weyrich, and then we're going to close it out. But I want you to watch this.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? He said he does not want everybody to work. This is from these are the people who talk about freedom all the time. Listen to it again.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of...
Well, what does that really mean? Okay, now this is Paul Weyrich, who said this way back in the 80s. Way back in the 80s. And I want to remind you of this. And I'm going to continue to remind you of this. And hopefully that we all make the right choice on November the 5th so that we can make our democracy better, not allowing it to be destroyed, because it will definitely impact our communities disproportionately than any other community. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. I want to thank you all for tuning in to the first hour of the Legal Hour with Cook County Circuit Court Judge Leonard Murray, and then staying with me during this time talking about Project 2025 and Agenda 47. I'm going to bring you more information about Project 2025 so that you are informed and so that you can make the right decision. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank you so much. And I want you all to have a good and safe